A lot of people are looking for 7-seaters these days, and more importantly, affordable 7-seaters. So if you're in the market for a 7-seater that's less than ₱1,000,000, why don't we check out the one that's here right now? It's the Suzuki Ertiga, and well, let's see what it has to offer. Now, the official name of this car is the Suzuki Ertiga Black Edition, but from where I'm standing, well, it doesn't look black to me because, well, you got a chrome grille, you got chrome garnishes inside the headlights, you got this chrome bit here, you even get chrome door handles and a chrome garnish over at the back. So why do they call this the Black Edition? Well, you'll find out the answer a little bit later. But for the looks, well, it's a typical MPV. You have a short front end, and the rest of the body is solely dedicated to maximize space inside. They even made this roof sort of like a bubble effect for added headroom. Now, Suzuki says that the front end of this car is what they call a pedestrian-friendly design. And what basically that means is, well, knock on wood, you end up knocking down a pedestrian. Well, they're not gonna get too badly hurt. Now, the design overall, I have to say, well, Suzuki put a bit of effort in it because, you know, MPVs, well, they're not the most exciting cars on the road, so it's nice that Suzuki added these sharp-looking headlights here and there. I mean, this grille looks pretty bold, and they added a bit of aggression here too by making the corners defined on the bumper. Now over to the side, well, you'll notice that, well, it looks like they extended the rear doors to make the Ertiga look longer than it actually is. This car is actually just around 4.3 meters long. It's even shorter than some subcompact sedans. Now, over at the back, you get these unique L-shaped taillights, and they stand out at night because they have like an LED strip that glows and all that. And as for the tailgate, it's a wide one with a very low floor area. So that makes loading in and out a lot easier. So that's a quick wrap up of the exterior. Let's head on inside and find out why it's called the Black Edition. Now, this is the reason why they call it the Black Edition. Well, do you see why? Well, okay, the only reason why they call this one a Black Edition is because of the interior color. It's all black in here. Okay, not totally, because you still have tan pillars and a tan roof lining. But, you know, that's the only reason why they call it such. Now, so if you've sat inside the tan interior Ertiga, tan edition perhaps? But yeah, I digress. So if you've sat in that one before, well, you're gonna get the same equipment, at least in the GLX model. So what do you get? Well, let's start with the doors. So yeah, it's got hard plastic everywhere and all that, but at least, you know, your armrests are padded and, you know, trimmed in cloth. Then you get wood. Well, lots of wood. You have it on the doors, you have it on the dash, and you even have it on the steering wheel. I have to say, it's not real wood. It's, well, plasti wood, or, well, faux wood. Now, when it comes to ergonomics, it's pretty straightforward. If you're coming from Japanese cars, you have your light stalks here, you have your wiper controls, your audio controls here, and you know, it's pretty simple and straightforward to use. And speaking of simple and straightforward, that exactly describes the instrument cluster. It's not a digital affair. Aside from the multi-information display in the center, you get analog dials, so an analog tachometer and an analog speedometer. So what I like about it is that it's clear, it's concise, and well, it's no fuss. So for people who appreciate simplicity, they will like the instrument cluster of the Suzuki Ertiga. Now, as for the multi-information display, that displays your trip meter, your trip B, your average fuel economy, and your mileage and whatnot. Now moving to the center, well, Suzuki followed the trend of making a floating screen, and that's exactly what's going on here. It's a 10-inch audio display, and we'll dig deeper a little into that later. So lower down here, you'll notice that it doesn't come with a digital air conditioning unit. It comes with good old knobs and dials. And what's amusing is when you turn them, like, you can hear the stuff moving at the back, and I find that rather amusing. And the same goes when you're going for ventilation or for recirculation. Now lower here, you have a USB port and an auxiliary port, a must-have these days. And you also have a 12-volt socket. So here at the front, you already have 2 charging ports. And there's also a fairly sizable cubby hole here. Now, what I like about the cup holders of the Ertiga is that they're chilled, they're ventilated. So when you have like a can of soda or a bottle of soda here and you need to keep it chilled for a long drive, that's going to be no problem here. However, you have to remind yourself that if you have a hot beverage, like say a cup of coffee, well, you have to shut it off, and thankfully it's an easy thing to do. All you have to do is roll this knob here. Now moving down to the center, you've probably noticed that there is no armrest, and I think the Ertiga would greatly benefit from that, and perhaps it would be nice if they added more storage space down here. Yeah, sure, you could put some shallow items here, but the corners aren't so high up, so in case you have to take a corner a little faster than usual, it might fling off into the horizon or elsewhere. Now, all in all, when it comes to design, well, it's a bit of a mix of straight lines and curves, because you look at the faux wood panel here and it follows like a curved line, and then when you look at the air conditioning vents, it's one straight line. Now, what I find amusing about the air conditioning vents is that you get 4 in front. No, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be colder here up front, but it's nice that there's more to go around. So you could put 2 for the driver and 2 for the passenger. Now for the display audio system, well, it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward, and well, by today's standards, pretty basic. Now, it doesn't have Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, but at least it has Bluetooth connectivity and USB connectivity. And it also comes with a built-in navigation system. You move to the next screen and you have, well, if you're going old school, you have a media card that'll play files from there, and even an iPod mode. Of course, you have your auxiliary in, and the AV-in caught my attention because, well, does it mean that the Ertiga can, display movies while you're on the move and stuff like that? Well, of course, we don't recommend you to watch movies while you're driving, but perhaps, for the kids, while the car's stationary, you could play something there. And, well, that pretty much covers the entire display audio system and the entire front end of the Ertiga. Now, of course, people buy stuff like these because they need to carry more people at the back. So let's head on there. Well, here at the back of the Ertiga, well, there's not much in the way of toys, but then again, that's sort of expected in this sort of segment. I mean, a lot of its competitors offer about the same equipment levels here at the back. But of course, this is a must in its class. It's a rear blower, and that's just to keep everyone here at the back cool, whether it's from the second row or on the third row. Now, also, I'm glad to report the Ertiga comes with a 12-volt socket here at the back. So all in all, you have 3 charging stations in the Ertiga. Now, when it comes to space, you can see I got, pretty good leg room, and you can even adjust these seats either forward or back for more room for either the second row or to give more room for your passengers in the third row. Now, I do wish the Ertiga came with a center armrest, but well, it sort of makes up for it by having these huge windows, because it lets a lot of light into the cabin, and it adds that sensation of more space. And for me, that's a pretty good thing. Now, practicality, you have a 1-liter door bottle in each of the doors, so there's really no excuse to get thirsty inside an Ertiga. And even the door pockets, while pretty thin, they're pretty deep as well, so you can stack magazines in there or whatever gubbins you have in mind. And you also have a pair of map pockets in each of the backrests of the front seat. So that's the second row covered. Let's head on to the third row. Now for the third row, and well, it's typically reserved and really best for children and short adults, but well, it's actually not bad back here. I mean, you can recline the seats and all that, and I even have an armrest here. I mean, this is supposed to be where the shocks are, but you know, I can put my arm here and I could sort of lounge back here too. And because you can slide the second row seats, legroom's pretty good, and I can even move it all the way forward so it can stretch out a little bit more. And you know, headroom, it's impressive in the second row, but it's also pretty good here in the third row. I still have about this much, and you know, that's the benefit of making it look sort of like a bubble by the roof. So it doesn't feel too cramped or too jammed up in here, and that's helped with these big windows, just like in the second row. So you keep getting that feeling that, you know, you're in a car that's, you know, more spacious than it actually is. And another thing here in the third row is you get bottle holders on each side, and Suzuki says you can put 1-liter bottles in each of them. So that's the third row covered. Of course, what happens if you need to load stuff? Well, here at the back. So let's check that out too. Now for the cargo area, but before we get to that, I have to, well, commend the third row seating arrangements because they're one of the easiest to set and to stow. Now all you have to do is pull a tab up here and let gravity do the rest. And if you need it, all you have to do is pull a strap and adjust the backrest. Now for the space, well, you have about 150 liters behind the third row seats. And if you fold the third row seats down, you have about 550 liters. And if you fold all of them down, you have well over 800 liters of total cargo space. But that's not all, because underneath this is extra storage space, and Suzuki says it adds about 46 liters to the total cargo area. So, well, 800 plus, so you almost have 900 liters of cargo area in this car that's less than 4.5 meters long. So when it comes to packaging, I say Suzuki did a pretty good job with this one. Okay, so now that we're on the road with the Ertiga, well, a couple of things. Well, because it doesn't come with a telescopic steering wheel, I find that, well, my arms are pretty stretched far out. So, I mean, I could go closer, but the thing is, I already feel like my legs are pretty close to the pedals as it is. So, what this car needs is a telescopic steering wheel, just to make it just a little bit more comfortable when you're turning. Because, well, check this out, I have to stretch my arms much further, and it's well, not exactly ideal. And this is already my correct seating position. Like, the backrest of the seats are already pretty upright, and well, I still feel like my arms are well, struggling to reach the wheel. So a telescopic steering wheel would be very helpful in this case. But aside from that, what else is there to say about the Ertiga? Well, I have to say that the ride is a touch on the firm side, not uncomfortably so. It's, you know, relatively supple. It does soak up some of the bumps, but you are going to feel them and you are going to hear them. You're going to hear that thump, thump, thump once you're driving over a bit of a rough patch. Now, perhaps the reason why Suzuki did that is, well, because it's designed to carry 7 people, it has to beef up the suspension. So that's sort of the compromise for that, or the middle ground for that. But, you know, drive it on a smoother surface, it's fine. Again, touch on the firm side, but not uncomfortably so. Now for the subject of handling, well, come on, just look at the Ertiga. It's not exactly going to be the, you know, it's not really suited for a racetrack or any of that. But I have to say that it's not the sharpest turning thing you'll ever drive, ever. At lower speeds, I found that when you turn the wheel, it takes a while for the car to respond to your inputs. And of course, it does improve at higher speeds, but most of the time we spend our driving lives in low-speed traffic. So, well, perhaps a quicker steering ratio would be better. But at least it's light, so you're not gonna get tired from driving it and all that. You just have to be aware of that, especially when you're on provincial roads or winding roads and all that. You just have to be a little bit more deliberate with your steering inputs. And speaking of steering inputs, if you attempt to drive this car in a, well, let's just say spirited manner, the car just responds with a lot of roll, a lot of pitch, a lot of lean, and you're basically just going to make all your passengers uncomfy. The best way to drive the Ertiga is sensibly and well under the speed limit. Of course, related to handling is braking, and that's very important because brakes are a very vital safety component of your car. How do they do? Well, initially when you step on the pedal, there's a bit of a dead feel, but you dig in a little bit deeper, just slightly deeper, and then you're gonna start feeling, it's actually pretty progressive. It's not grabby, it's not mushy or any of that. And that's the kind of braking you want in a car. It doesn't shock you, and it also means you can stop smoother, and you know exactly how much pressure to put when you're stepping on the brakes. Now the Ertiga is designed to carry 7 passengers. That's granted. But let's face it, most of the time you're gonna drive this thing alone. So how does it feel in terms of performance? Well, I could best describe it as adequate. Now, it's got a 1.5 liter with a hair over 100 horsepower, so it's not gonna set any acceleration records anytime soon. But again, it delivers enough punch. I mean, you're not gonna feel shortchanged in any of when you're overtaking and all that. Of course, there is the limitation of power, so you might have to plan your overtakes. But as a whole, you're not gonna get worried getting past or getting short in power when you're on the highway or when you need to overtake at sensible city speeds. However, while the engine's fine, I have to say something about the transmission because, well, it's a 4-speed unit. And, we live in an era where everyone does, at the very least, a 5-speed. Well, 4 just feels pretty antiquated, and you feel it in this car. It's not like some 4-speed automatics that, they're surprisingly well spaced. So it's got long gears and all that, so it's not the most responsive. And when you want to accelerate quickly, when you dig your foot a little bit deeper, it takes a while to kick in, but as 4-speed automatics go, well, it's smooth shifting, but it's just not the fastest shifting. But despite that 4-speed transmission, I have to report that fuel economy is good because despite heavy traffic these past couple of days and all that, it still returns 10.4 kilometers per liter. I mean, sure, in the background you're seeing, well, pretty smooth flowing traffic, but during rush hour traffic, it still returns over 10 kilometers per liter. That's a very impressive feat. And what makes it even more impressive, it doesn't need any of those stop-start systems and all that. It's just a naturally efficient engine. And that's what you need in a daily driver these days, because fuel's not getting any cheaper and all that. So, you have that extra peace of mind driving this car because you know that you're not going to rack up a whole lot of fuel bills with it. Now, despite the 4-speed automatic, the Ertiga still delivers a surprising amount of fuel economy because, well, in heavy traffic, it still manages to return 10.4 kilometers per liter. That's what it says so here in the instrument cluster. And what makes it even more impressive, aside from the fact that it's still stuck with a 4-speed transmission, it doesn't need any electronic trickery and all that. It doesn't need a stop-start system. It doesn't need cylinder deactivation. It's a simple engine, but apparently it's naturally efficient. And that's a good thing, and that's what you need in a daily driver. And you have that extra peace of mind when you're driving one of these because, you're looking at the figures and all that, and the back of your head, you're just thinking, well, I don't have to pay a lot of fuel bills when I'm driving this car on a daily basis. Now, since the Ertiga is a family car, I think it needs like a certain safety feature. And well, aside from the fact that it only has 2 airbags, I think it needs side airbags too. This car doesn't come with stability control. And well, you're carrying your family along, and sure, it's not designed to go fast or take on corners quickly and any of that, but well, sometimes you can never tell. You have to do an evasive maneuver, an emergency maneuver and all that. So you want that reassurance from the stability control as a sort of helping hand to get you around that obstacle as fuss-free and as drama-free as possible. And I hope Suzuki, when they update this model, would make that feature standard. Even if it's not for the lower end models, even just this higher spec variant, as long as it has stability control, that would be good enough. But thankfully, it does have, well, let's call it the SOP safety feature. So as I mentioned, it's got dual airbags, anti-lock brakes, and electronic brake force distribution, just to make it more stable under hard braking. So what do we think of the Ertiga, particularly this GLX Automatic Black Edition? Well, at 988,000 pesos, it's a hair under 1 million, but it's still under that psychological 1 million peso barrier. And, it has a lot of showroom appeal. I mean, it's got a good amount of space inside, and the third row is surprisingly comfortable. Now, sure, in the driving department, it falls, well, I wouldn't say it falls short, but it's not the most exciting thing out there. But that's not the purpose of the Ertiga now, is it? Its main purpose in life is to shuttle people from point A to B. And when it comes to performance, it's adequate at best, but it more than makes up for it when it comes to fuel economy. Now, just one feature would make this one of the best family MPVs you can get, and that's stability control. If Suzuki would put it standard in the next generation or the update of the Ertiga, then it would make it, well, an ideal family MPV. Now, this has been Anton Andres from AutoIndustriya.com. If you enjoyed this video, do subscribe to our YouTube channel, and while you're at it, like us on Facebook as well. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Thanks for watching.